Hello and welcome to the Captain's Table, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Paul, Berserker01, Batman Shelley. I should probably also turn on the camera so you all can see who are guests they can see. Your humble host and space bartender here at the Astra Pub and yours facilitator here at the Captain's Table. Now, what is the Captain's Table? It's where I bring people from all over the Star Citizen universe to discuss various aspects of Star Citizen, lore, news, reviews, theory crafting, just sit down and talk. Now, originally, I was going to have a couple people come on. We had Ollie and Level Cap were going to come on, but a health issue happened with one of them, so we decided that I was going to kind of have to delay this, and so I had to scramble. So I asked for some help, and Jale and Zarrk asked, so kindly said, yeah, I'll just come on and talk. So, and it also helps out that it's Alien Week, so we can ask some questions for Jale, since he did that wonderful translation of the Xi'an message, which came out recently. But also because we're going to talk a little bit about the Banu merchantman today. But before we get to all that, let's get started with Zarrk. Who are you? What do you do in Star Citizen, and where can they find you?
They can find me on your Discord.
Yes.
Just a basic community member. Play the game, help new people find their way. Nothing much.
Yeah.
And I love to talk about Star Citizen. That's why I'm here.
And Jale, who are you? What do you do in Star Citizen, and where can they find you?
I'm Jale. You can usually find me on the Law Citizen podcast with Paul. I do some xenolinguistic stuff, and this is a good time of the year for me because they have loads of contests around my interests.
Now let's get started with the discussion on, speaking of xenolinguistics and xenos in general. The Banu merchantman had a big reveal for ISC, a lot more information, a lot more stuff seen for it. Just general thoughts, Jale. What are your general thoughts on the Banu merchantman, what you saw?
I think that there's some stuff in the chat about questioning, is it getting too big? And it does seem to have absolutely everything in the kitchen sink. I love the style of it. I think that the fact it's got a little bit bloated, as some people have noticed, was essentially that was always going to happen, given the number of features they intended for it. And I'm really excited to see it. I think it looks really great, and I really like how they're building on the ideas of what would a big alien ship like this look like and be in a way which would be very different to a human ship.
Yeah, I was going to say one of the things that it's important to remember is to give context, because this was released in concept was released in 2014, right?
I think even
2013.
I believe it was even before the Carrack.
Yeah, super early.
And the Carrack is 2014.
And when it was released into concept, at the same time, the Caterpillar was called the Evil Freelancer. To give a context. So things have expanded dramatically from that time period. Pretty much all of the ships that were larger than a single-seater fighter from that time have ballooned in their size over time, just because of the nature, because they didn't really have the metrics down at that point. So they were just kind of working off of what they thought. And then as they've developed it, they've realized they needed wider spaces and all sorts of things. So it's not just the Banu merchantman. Everything from that time period has gotten bigger. So, Zarrk, your thoughts? Go ahead. Sorry, Joe.
No, I was just completely agreeing with you. Like, there was so much stuff where they just let artists run free and go, draw us a cool ship. And they had concepted gameplay mechanics for those cool ships. And then when one met the other, something had to give.
Yeah.
The merchantman. Where do I start? Yeah, I think during the ISC and the Vault League afterwards, or the Vault feature, I probably went through a pack of tempos. I'll be honest, the first iteration of the merchantman, it wasn't mine. When it was still pretty much 125 meters, the alien alternative to the Carrack. But ever since CitizenCon 2 years ago, I believe, when they showed the update, boy, they made this ship something insane. And I was always interested in how they bring the Defender to the size, because having something organic is easy if you have only a small ship. And now you have the whole tree, this tree of life thing that goes through there. You have all those. I mean, as I said, you have those small corridors you walk through, and then it opens up to the bazaar. Just those impressions, and it's not even talking about all those curves and how they flow from one spiral to another. Simply architect. I can't wait to see morphologists reviewing that beast. Yeah, I have some interaction with architecture, and I'm just, what have you done? Those guest rooms, boy.
They're gold mean. They use the gold mean like the spiral.
Yeah, it's just insanely well done. I'm also pretty glad that they changed the wings. It's not this folding upwards, this awkward first animation, but now they go inside, they move in, then move out.
Yeah.
Very, very excited about the thing. The only thing I'm kind of torn about is the turret room, because it's this grand room, and I am not someone who asks for big guns usually, but boy, please have this turret have guns that allow for this room to have a purpose, to really pull in the awe of, you go into the turret, you go through this room, because no shit gets real.
Yeah.
And one thing has to be said: the first angle of the Merchman. They had to look for the worst angle just to bring the memes online.
The memes?
Otherwise I can't explain how this happened.
It's what is it? Misa Banu Merchantman? Is that the joke that it looks like Jar Jar Binks?
Yeah. I mean, in the wall pictures, it's much better looking, so they pretty much had to look for the worst angle, and every ship has one. But oh boy, and then the cargo hold with all those 1 STU crates. Boy, this thing is
3,600. Someone in chat calculated. It's over 3,000 SEU. Just alone.
I believe, based on the concept image with the from CitizenCon, where they had the 32 SEU containers stacked, it's more like 2,500. They reduced it from the original 3.2 thousand. But John Groot said something about this, but we will know it when the ship is finished.
Yeah. I will say it looked good in my opinion. I liked the market. It felt very open air market. It felt very ancient market for anyone who's seen like kind of the old markets from Europe, especially like the old Roman markets, which are the way they're built. It feels very similar to that.
I must say I thought more Arabic markets.
That too,
like the bazaars.
Like very bizarre and that kind of stuff. It feels Mediterranean. It feels like a Mediterranean or like an open air. With the all of the different stalls facing inward and kind of double layer in the middle kind of center. People in chat talking about like the promenade from Deep Space Nine. It's very very similar to that kind of feel. And it's obviously the kind of influences for that.
Yeah, the only thing I haven't understand is you have the sleeping area with the circle of cuddles,
Mm-hmm.
and you have 9 beds, but like 30 seats.
Well, you don't have 9 beds. Those aren't beds because Xi'an don't use beds. Sorry,
Yeah,
Banu don't use
it
beds.
is intended for human
Yeah.
use, so they have
No.
put in some beds because they say for a human crew.
It's sufficient for human use, but it's more like a sort of reclining couch from the Banu perspective. I'm kind of like bullshitting it a little bit, but you know, they did this with the Defender as well. Banu don't lie down to sleep, so but they have to put in something so that human players can log in, log out. So these 9, I would call them relaxation couches, which can be used as beds. You know, there should be sufficient, and there's the 2 staterooms as well, isn't there?
Mm-hmm. But again, the relaxation couches are like 9 or 10.
Yeah.
And you have 30 seats in the circle, which seems a bit disappropriate. No, not disappropriate.
Disproportionate.
Disproportionate. Yeah.
Yeah.
Listen,
well, I guess you might.
Go ahead. Yeah.
You might be bringing your friends back for a party.
I mean, that's what is that? What is that center thing used for? It's a sex pit. We all know it's a sex pit. All right. It's one of those hot tubs that you just do not want to go into for a very long time.
I mean,
you know,
I know people have asked, can we do X club or Y club? Well, you have the bar area, the bazaar area, and then you have
the VIP pit. Area with the sex pit. Oh gosh.
Yeah.
That. I do like a lot of the aspects of it. It feels alien enough without it feeling too unusable. I think, and it makes me the honest to God thing is looking at it and go, I'm really looking forward to the Raylan now, because like the merchantman is going to set a lot of those examples, or like say the driller. You know, I'm sure we'll see a Vandal driller or some Vandal like in ships with interior components in Squadron 42, just to see how alien they look. Because you typically use with video games, you'll see the default alien design is spherical, like lots of spheres or ovals and very smooth lines and stuff like that. But the Banu takes it to an 11.
To bring up Crisis again, the in the first game when you enter the spaceship and you just have this 0G room where you have no idea which direction is where. So alien is feeling, and that's great.
Mm-hmm.
And same and with the Merchantman, they have brought it back to a usable amount of strangeness, like all those doors that fold in and fold out, the healing pits, the jelly slime baths, whatever they put in there. It's an awesome ship.
Back to tanks. I'm going to start calling them, I think. Yeah.
I always like those little things next to them. I always assume that those are like aromatherapy, because knowing the Banu, it's like the Banu like have heard of the term aromatherapy. So like humans like smelly things, so we're just gonna start filling these things with random smelly things and make humans feel better, right? Because
random smelly things from a perspective of a Banu. You do not want to be in this room. You do not want to be there.
Banu have a very sensitive sense of smell to the extent that they think that wheels stink, which I think might have just been the lore team sort of being passive aggressive towards their experiences at SystemCon. they just have a chapter in the language guide called "You All Smell," and but yeah, they for them an aromatherapy bar would actually probably be quite delicate from our perspective. Yeah,
I can also see that. Like cleaning the air is like especially if you're like in rehab, having the idea that you have something that's designed to just fill the area with clean air, like an air purifier almost, right next to your drippings with goo bed.
But considering that Banu can,
go ahead.
But Banu can eat pretty much everything, if I remember right.
Yeah, they have a strong constitution.
Yeah, so they pretty much eat everything, and now it would be interesting if their sense of taste is, like with us human, linked to their sense of smell. And hence, if they would eat pretty much everything because they can, and they are very pragmatic in this way, they might actually find very strange things tasty, and those things could smell very, very badly for us.
Yeah. I mean, it's more to the point that they just they're not saying that we have a very detectable smell for them, even though they can tolerate a great deal of different flavors and intensities of flavors. They're just quite aware that we just have more of a pong than they do.
So just to sidetrack a bit, interesting thing is, if you visit Asia, Asian people don't really sweat like we Western people do. So they are very sensitive to our body odor. So if you don't shower every day, probably even if you do in the evening, you smell for them. So they keep the distance. So it's the same thing. But it is pretty much real life with similar. Yeah, we smell as well.
I was going to say it's very similar to kind of the ancient Roman and like Mediterranean concepts of having like communal baths. That's what people calling it the sex pit. To me, it always seems like a communal. It seems like a communal bath, because like you have the couches and everything else like that, which feels.
I don't see how those things can't be put together.
Sex pit and bath.
Yeah, I mean,
the whole place kind of looks like a Nautilus from the if you consider it, and the end of the Nautilus seems to go off to some sort of ablution area. Though it remains to be seen what that involves.
Yeah. But yeah, overall, I think that the Banu Merchant looks good. It looks great. And I've been calling it the Trader's Carrack, because that's really what it is. It's going to meet all of the desires you need as a trader. And it's going to have a respawn bed. It has all this space. It has, place for your crew. It has lots of guns. It's got its own trading area. It's got lots of cargo. Like it is what the Carrack is for exploration. It is for trading.
In all honesty, I would go so far and say, if you have more than 6 people and you want to go explore, take the Merchantman, not the Carrack.
Yeah, well, to a degree. Yes, fast card, another Carrack killer. I don't think it'll kill the Carrack, though. I think it's too big and fuel inefficient compared to the Carrack, I'll be sure. But it's one of those things where it is an overpowered ship. And it makes sense to make it an overpowered ship, because it's designed to fill a role that is very difficult for any other ship except for maybe a privateer to fill. So, all right. Let's move on to the next major topic, which is 317.2. We got a bunch of leaks recently for 317.2, and I'm going to ask the cast about their own kind of thoughts of things that have been pulled out there. Zarrk, what are things, anything that surprised or excites you about 317.2 that we know, now that we know it's gone to Evocati?
To be honest, I haven't been looking too much into the leaks as of now, for 317, because much of the things I got notice of are the things we pretty much knew already.
Mm-hmm.
We knew of all those things they work on. Monthly report. Read the monthly report. That's pretty much it. We have the Siege of Orison going on. We have the keys were for 318, not 72. Okay. Now I know why I hate those 2 patches, because which was which. Yeah. I must say it's a good content patch. It has nice things to do, but I will just hop over to 318 and be done. I'll be honest. Maybe I do 1 or 2 runs of the Siege of Orison, but I want 318. I will go in and I take all those bad bugs, all the problems, all these crashes that the persistence will bring, and I will enjoy it.
Okay. No, nothing really like standing out for you or anything? Just waiting for 318?
Siege of Orison is great. Especially if it's really like a precursor for a true in a building Die Hard situation. Awesome. But aside from the event, I don't see that much excitement. I have been waiting for Persistence like too long now. At this point, it's give me Persistence. Give it.
All right. Jale, anything stand out for you in terms of the 317.2, what we've seen for the notes and everything?
I think the Siege of Origin does what it says on the tin. It's going to give people some new FPS content and a bit of flight content. Great. I'm sure people enjoy that. And there's a couple of things where it doesn't really, well, I don't think anyone's getting that excited about the new Lagrange points, because they're probably going to be more of the same of what we've seen with the Lagrange points already filled. But then the other three features, I think, have some real interest to me. Derelict Reclaimer, that looks really cool, and I think it really shows what they're thinking for derelicts moving forward. It's far more detailed than the Derelict Javelin we've seen. There's like things growing inside it in the leaks. And that's nice, and that shows the direction they're trying to take. Points of interest to me. I think that the illegal delivery missions, that's going to provide some fun for people, but I think that's their first. Well, it's still early forays into having missions that have diverging reputation impact, and it not just being a list of jobs, but a lifestyle that you choose by going through which missions you choose. But the really big feature, the one which is really going to be built upon, although this is only the basement concrete layer, is the AI planetary navigation mesh. Because that gives them the ability to send out, say, to start programming in things like saying, these two locations, there's like a spaceport and a mining facility, and you will find vehicles driving back and forth between them. It allows the AI to navigate across planets, which they can't do currently. And that's a huge feature.
Even better, as you spoke about the derelicts, to bring life into those derelicts, to make them populated, to have humans and later on animals roam them. We need a planetary nav mesh, because those derelicts going forward, they will be procedurally placed. So the AI needs to procedurally take a look, where am I, how can I move? And yeah. So
I mean, I've said quite a few times before that I really think that in order to make the worlds that they have written without massively scaling back their ideas of what the UE looks like, they need to get procedural cities in a way that goes into procedural landscape, and they need to get procedural roads in the same way they're doing in a way that's related to the way they're doing procedural rivers. And if they can't crack those two, then they can't make the sort of lived-in universe. They can only make what we see with Stanton and Pyro, which is these very kind of like young colonial worlds. You'd never be able to make Terra, for example, as described.
So I say, first of all, procedural roads, they pretty much cracked this already. The rivers are procedurally generated for the most part. At least that's where the tool's heading to. And they work with scaling on the height map. You simply have to exchange the height map with city location or travel destination, and you can generate a road map.
Of course, but the fact is that they haven't yet completed this, and they haven't yet delivered on those, or even really talked about it in a long time. But if we want if you want a place like, say, Magnus, which is only one jump away, but it's been there for a couple more centuries than Stanton, and it should have, in theory, towns, and those towns should be linked. That objective needs to be created. It needs to be met. But similarly, this whole navigation mesh thing, and having the AI being able to navigate between the locations on the worlds what you already have, I think is a step towards that life that they would then have.
Definitely.
Yeah.
And by roads, I'll be honest, I'm not sure if they bring in the roads right now, what would connect what? We don't have any distance that makes sense to connect via road. You will not draw. I think the only sensible distance is the one outpost right next to Lorville, and even that's 100 kilometers.
Mm-hmm.
So if you take any other outpost and connect this to Lorville, aside from a couple of crazy idiots, no one will drive 800 kilometers in there with a rover.
Well,
no.
I continue to say that the reason why the roads are important isn't because necessarily players will do it, but because NPCs will drive on it. So that way you have mesh for NPCs to drive from point A to point B, and then you'll have missions that will involve those NPCs, or just randomly you could stop those NPCs driving and see what they got. You know.
For this, we need the planetary nerve mesh.
Yeah.
And
yeah,
I think, but as I said, I think the road part of living, breathing planets is done pretty much. The more interesting part is we have the colonial outpost, and I'm pretty sure they have already a somewhat procedural tool to create them, to place them, and in theory, we could connect them. The other part is building cities, and that's pretty much where more or less my field of expertise lies within. Procedurally generating a city means you have to cut corners and use magic wherever you can, because otherwise you're pretty much fucked. Reason being is cities are very complex, and if you break them, so you already have to break them down just so it can be viably in game. Then you have to procedurally generate the interior of buildings, at least some of them. Then you have to think, okay, how big is such a city? Is it 10 square miles? Is it 50 square miles? And then you have to think about, okay, those things they can't repeat, but they should look similar. So even without modern standards, I say, which would make it completely impossible, just generating these cities on the fly and still have them playable and interesting areas, this will be a huge problem.
Yeah, I don't think they'll ever probably have really big procedural cities that are quite, to quote the usual phrase, playable and interesting.
Yeah.
I think that they would be flyover kind of places. You'd have a central location that maybe is explorable, and then highways that are now and maybe train network, but that essentially, much like the bulk of Lorville, it's set dressing. But that is an important set dressing to have in order to represent a place that has been inhabited for several hundred years.
But if we only talk about set dressing, we already have procedurally generating cities.
We don't have procedural generated cities that actually merge into landscape yet, which is the feature I was actually saying that they're missing.
Okay.
Yeah, and the thing that is, I was to completely agree with you as well. You're right that there's nowhere in Stanton where roads make sense, and that's a great reason why starting with Stanton was a great idea, because they don't need to make fully developed human habitations. Essentially, they have their one mega city planet, and everywhere else is just sort of outposts. But they'll need to overcome those barriers. But what the nav mesh allows them to do now is to have the areas around these points of interest actually inhabited with, the mining car going out to collect resources, or the security team patrolling a perimeter around the town. So it's not just this tiny little oasis of buildings and then nothing.
So I'll be honest, if I was CRG, I would bring the next step of bringing plans to life. I would do the following. First, I would use the colonial outpost, place them, connect them with roads. Just use. I mean, we can start over in Lorville, in Pyro, but we could also use Lorville. We could use Microtech. place them around the main city. Okay. Those aren't big outposts. We've seen them. That's like 3 buildings or 4. They can be placed easily. They can arrange procedurally. Everything works. And then instead of scaling up to a city, we go from an outpost to a small town. So we place 2 or 3 of those outposts together, and then 4, and then I would actually go and create outpost buildings that are double storied. So you have pretty much 2 outposts on top of each other, and then 3, and then 4. So you don't generate the city as much as you generate growing outposts that in the end may rival a city. That's the more. Yeah.
So the thing is what you're talking about is the procedural, is the colonial outposts. I don't think you're going to see a situation where we're going to see Star Citizen build towns as something that goes from an outpost, like from like a research lab to a small village to a town to a city. I think you're likely going to see different procedural tech developed to procedurally generate a town, and that town will be that town forever, or that city will be that city forever. And that's what we're seeing with the colonial outposts. Is that
the thing is, colonial outposts, if you have to imagine that the outside of those things, how they look, you can change. But they have the colonial outposts. They work, and they can be procedurally generated, as far as I know.
Mm-hmm.
Next step, and then you can use this as a base block, and instead of putting 1 block down, you put 2 next to each other, or maybe on top of each other. And this is how you get the towns and the cities with the same base building block. This is how I would do it. I'm not sure if it works engine-wise or if they are in such a way feasible, but this is how I would tackle this instead of trying to create a city or a tech to create a city from scratch. Because this is just headache.
Zarrk, you do know they already did that, right? That's the basis of the planetary generation tech, was that cryoengineers built a city from scratch, procedure generated a city from scratch.
Yeah, yes, but the issue that Zarrk and I have been talking about here is that, yes, they can make a city, a cityscape, and they can make landscape, but that transition zone is actually really challenging to build, where you're going from your ArcCorp to your microtech landscape in a way that makes sense, and those are kind of being treated as 2 separate things, because they can't just put ArcCorp city tiles and then just wilderness without that looking weird. And it does. That's kind of what they do with Lorville, right? They have a big wall around the whole place, and that makes sense in the context of Lorville, but it won't make sense when we come to the outskirts of Prime and Terra.
Yeah. And the other part is, if you just generate the city, you have the problem, what's the interior? What's the gameplay value? And if you go from the single colonial outpost brick and stack them onto each other, next to each other, they are already playable as intended. Now you just have to think about how can you expand on them. That's why I say this makes more sense. And before we talk about anything else, CIG, one big important thing for your cities, for your landing zones, get rid of the stairs. Final.
Stairs?
No more stairs, please.
They're still going to have stairs. I don't know why stairs are going to be everywhere.
The problem is, okay, the stairs they have don't make any fucking sense. It is so. Let's go with Lorville. Lorville is a city. Oh boy. I fear the rework. It might be even worse. So you can't go down to the train station without using stairs. even if we account for the Hersons not caring for anyone who's disabled and can't walk, how do you get your trolley with repair parts down there? How do you get your medic trolley down there to pick up someone who is unconscious? Same for the staircase up to the ASOC terminal. How do you get?
You know the answer? Because I know the answer.
There's an elevator behind one of the locked doors.
Yep, Wonkavaders, baby.
I mean, I spent some of my week in London, and I think anybody visiting London will be surprised how many completely inaccessible places there are, unless you have stairs. If you cannot go across stairs, it is, for a world city, it is quite amazing. But I mean, to return to the planetary navigation topic, I think that there's to sort of round out this conversation about like the layouts of places. It does allow them, even if this is the brute force way to do this, it does allow them to sort of go, okay, we've got this, the procedural placement, we've spat out a number of colonial settlements, and now we're going to have a quantum enabled AI model of what they want from each other and what each one produces, and turn up the speed to 1,000 and let them run for a year in their time and see which paths they actually use all the time, and then make those roads. And that is the brute force way to do it. But that could give you very organic and believable road networks as part of your procedural generation, as a sort of second order generation. And then that second order generation could then inspire the third order generation of, well, where you get the intersection of three roads, that's where you'll then get another place which is a refueling station. And I'm quite excited by the way that they could use the AI's map of the landscape to direct the second and third order procedural generations.
I'm not sure that Quanta would actually work that way, because I'm not sure that Quanta can actually track the terrain in that much of a detail to travel between two locations and recognize, is this a hard route or not?
No, what Quanta would be doing in that transaction is giving the giving the mission, giving the link of saying, okay, well, point A and point B, they need to do business with each other.
Yeah.
And then there's a line, and then whatever AI pathing is drawing that line.
I'm going to move on because this is good conversations and we get this stuff.
Yeah, we got deep into it. It's good.
Yes.
I mean, using NavMesh would be awesome.
It's important to remember as well that like NavMesh is a huge deal, because NavMesh being added to the game is more than it unlocks a lot of different things other than just combat missions. It unlocks a different amount of potential for pretty much anything. And I was always thought, oh, well, NavMesh is going to be limited to a very specific area. But there was a discussion that they had recently about, I think it was Star Citizen Live, when they talked with them about NavMesh. And they were basically like, yeah, it's a tool that can do anything. We can use this to, do anything. Because people were asking the right question, which is, yeah, NavMesh seems like it's only being built so that you can procedurally navigate around this certain area. So, we're not going to see AI wandering off into the wilderness and just never coming back. And the answer is, yeah, you could. They said, yeah, they could definitely deafen. They could just wander. You could kite them as far as you want them to. It's just a matter of AI logic saying at one point going, hey, this is dumb, I should go back. So
the only sad thing is it's one of those unsung heroes again. People not recognizing what it means and being salty that there's no progress.
I think they'll get excited once they start encountering NPCs in the wilderness. Yeah, and I think that's quite exciting.
Once they get killed in the Reclaimer wreck, and who killed me?
Yeah. Especially if you go in the middle of nowhere and seeing them, or having them come out of the woods while you're doing a mission, or them attacking a base that you happen to be building or whatever. So, Yeah. Jale, did you already go over? Yeah, you already went over your thoughts on it. Zarrk, you did. Okay, I'll say the big thing is for me that would surprise me with 317.2 was the reinforcements. Something they've been talking about a long time, but there was no mention of it like until recently. The fact that they said, hey, we're going to try to add this to 317.2 is a big deal because it means not just nav mesh, but it also means transportation. Like this is a step before NPC transportation and player to NPC and transportation, because it means that NPCs can land ships onto planets and take off. Mm-hmm. It also means that NPCs can disembark from ships onto planets. So the only step at that point is just loading them back onto it. And we can already see with some of the bugs in 317.1 that if you park in a hangar, sometimes AI will wander onto your ship and sit down in the seats.
I will pop your bubble. Uh-huh. Reinforcements, in my eyes, does not mean that the NPCs will be able to land a ship and disembark. First of all, I am pretty sure they will crash the ship.
That's what 317.1 says, or 317.2 says. They will land the ship, and they've actually been showing off the ships coming down and disembarking.
Yeah, the thing is, we all know how new things go. Mm-hmm. They burn. And the second part is I could actually see them being a bit cheap about it, so that maybe the ship comes down, lands, but the NPCs just spawn near the ship. Depending on does it work on the big server, not just on the internal one, but on the server.
I don't think we're going to see a situation where the ship comes down and then AI just randomly pop into existence next to the ship, because we've seen them test this tech out as far back as 2019, I want to say, because it was shown off in the 2019 CitizenCon of AI getting out of ships. And it seems like the issue at that point was not necessarily AI getting out of ships. It was that nav mesh didn't exist. So AI getting out of ships wouldn't matter because they didn't know where they were unless they were in a specific scripted area. They could get out of ships. So it seems like they've had this tech in there for a bit, and now they're finally able to implement the tech properly in a gameplay form. So, but we'll see. Because it's not a confirmed feature yet. It's just was leaked in one of the patch notes. And as someone who's experienced this in the past, a lot of stuff that gets put into Evocati may just be testing. It's not confirmed. It just may be to see, hey, does this work or not? If it doesn't work, they may not release it at all. So it could change.
Are the ships crashing or not?
Yeah, exactly.
Midnight Black in the comments is saying, do you think they'll attack your ship if it's unoccupied? If you're around doing some dirty and you've left your ship unoccupied, do you think they'll go and strafe it? And I think that'd be, certainly not in this patch.
No.
Certainly, I don't think they'll be that smart yet. But I can see that being a thing. I don't think they'd come in and just bomb you, because otherwise, where's the gameplay fun? But them flying over and taking some shots at your ship and so forth, that's making it fun for you to then try and run back to your ship while they're trying to stop you and so forth.
So the turrets of the bunkers shoot at your ship even if you left it. So based on the same friend-foe recognition, what the AI probably will have, I could say they might kill your ship.
They do.
They come down and they shoot it.
They do now do that, but they've also said that I think in that same discussion when there were that SCL, that question was asked, will they attack your ship? And landing forces apparently will not prioritize your ship. They will prioritize anything but you before they attack your ship. So not, you won't have someone walking out of a cutlass steel with a railgun and they just railgun your ship to death. It'll probably be more like they go fight you.
Cutlass steel is coming, shooting your ship, landing, and your ship is gone. Or the turret of the cutlass steel is shooting your ship. I've
had because now pirates spawn in atmosphere. I've had pirates take out my ship while I landed, near an outpost. So it's definitely possible.
What I want what I want is my North by Northwest moment of running along while
while being shot
down behind.
Yeah.
Or like Finn and Rey in The Force Awakens when they're running out to try and find a ship to get away and go for the quad jumper.
Yeah.
And they're running and it shoots and the ship blows up in front of them. That's the kind of stuff I would like to see. Personally.
I'd like to see that too. I don't think we're going to be there with this patch, but I think in the future soon. Because right now ships don't prioritize players; they prioritize ships, but not players. So, yeah. All right. I think that's it for our discussion. I said it was going to be a little shorter today. We're going to move over into the questions and answer session. So, if you're watching this on YouTube, thank you so much for watching. If you're watching this on Twitch, thank you so much for watching. If you're on YouTube, make sure you subscribe, hit the like button if you enjoyed this, comment down below your own thoughts about these topics. Make sure that you join us on Discord and, of course, go check out Jale and check out Jale's appearances on Lore Citizens if you want more lore stuff. We do that podcast every so often. And, like I say every time, hope to see you someday in the black.